сейчас у нас выступит Джон Камс, который работает в компании tinyBuild, и он нам расскажет замечательные штуки. Джон?
Hi. That's really loud, sorry. Since I only speak English, I don't know what he said, so I'm going to introduce myself. My name is John Combs, and today I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible about what it takes to make your game cross-platform. If you want to build your game on PC and Xbox and PlayStation and Switch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all the things that you may not have thought about, we're going to discuss. So first, a little bit about me. My name is John Combs. I'm the CTO of tinyBuild. I have been for the last 5 months, so it's relatively new for me. But I've been in the industry for a long time. I'm going on 17 years. You can see the games I've worked on and where I've been. So, why ship a game on a different platform? This is the reason. The big thing I want to talk about is, one, you want to make more money. You build a PC game. There's lots of people that don't want to play it on PC, might want to play it on Xbox, PlayStation, et cetera, et cetera. That's a big reason you might want to ship it to different platforms. Exposure is a big thing. So, again, you might make a great game. We just shipped a game called Hello Neighbor that was loved on PC, but there was a lot of Xbox players that wanted to play it as well. So we made sure it showed up on the Xbox. And the last is more of a business thing, but it's future relationships. So if you put out a great game on Nintendo or worked with a great, amazing publisher, say like tinyBuild, and wanted to do more games with them, being able to publish across all these platforms is really good for your future. It may not be the specific game you're working now, but it's good things for the future. First, we'll talk about platforms. So there are many, many platforms out there, and I'm not going to go into them all. I'm going to avoid mobile. I'll make reference to mobile platforms, iOS and Android, but I'm not going to go into them very deep, just because I could probably talk about this stuff for days, and I only have about 45 minutes. But in general, if you want to keep it to consoles and PCs, these 4 platforms are going to account for over 95% of your sales. So I'm going to focus on these. And that's PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and Steam. The other platforms, they're great platforms. Listed a few there. There's a few I don't have, like iOS, Android. There's a lot of other little ones. I know there's probably somebody out there saying, why aren't you focusing on Linux? And Linux is a great platform. It has unique benefits. You know, it's really wonderful. And if you put your game out on Linux, you will love the tens of sales you'll get from it, because it just doesn't sell. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time covering these. And I'm sorry to all you Linux and Mac OS fans. So I'm going to spend time talking about each 3 individual parts: the technical side of things, the production side of things, and the design side of things. So when it comes to technical, you tend to download engines that are out there. Unity, Unreal, there's a few people that use Game Maker and Monogame. And they come with a great promise. You build a game in Unity, and I listed it right there, like, oh wow, I just need to push a button, and I can put it on the Switch. And I can put it on the Xbox One. It's super simple. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And I push the platform, and you get profit, and you win. That's what they promise. Fortunately, reality is a little bit more complex than that. So let's talk about, I'm going to go through the hardware of each one. So you have the PlayStation 4. Right now is out you have the old PS4, the PS4 Slim, and the PS4 Pro. Those consoles are high performance. So if you build a game that really needs 60 FPS, these consoles can handle it well, especially the PS4 Pro. You play it on a TV, which is a bigger screen. The PS4 Pro supports 4K and HDR, but there's 2 things that the PlayStation does that none of the other platforms do. They have a little light on the front of their controller that you can control inside your game. And there's benefits that I'll get into later about using that. And their controller has a touchpad. The Xbox controller does not. So if you are porting your game to the PS4, you have to make sure that if you want to use these features, that even though they didn't happen to be in the Steam version or the PC version, you have to consider this when you put it on the PlayStation. Next thing is the Xbox. So the Xbox One. You have the Xbox One, you have the Xbox One S, and then you have the Xbox One X, which is a lot of X's. Again, just like the PS4, high performance. You play it on the TV, same way. Xbox One X has 4K and HDR, and a few other things they termed enhanced. Xbox tends to be one of the easier ones to port to when you're talking about technical controls, because the Xbox is basically like a Windows PC for the most part. And the controller is one you usually can buy at a store into a PC game. Then we have the Nintendo Switch. I just read a story that the Switch has already outsold the Wii U, so it is the very popular one right now. But there's things you have to take into account on that as well. The Switch is not a very strong piece of hardware. It's a bit slower, quite a bit slower than PS4 and Xbox. If you have a game that needs high frame rate, you need to spend time making sure that you can get your game to perform on the Switch. Unique thing about the Switch, it plays on the TV and in handheld mode. Both of those modes have different performance requirements. When you go on a TV, because it's plugged in, it's on the TV, it's expected to be higher frame rate, but Nintendo really wants to keep the same thing when you hold on to it in handheld mode. And when it's in handheld mode, it does not perform as fast. So you need to take that into account. Switch also has interesting controller. They have the Joy-Cons where you can hold it like a regular controller, but they can also come off. So if you have a game that has more than 4 players, you have to really think about, if I port this to the Xbox, how do I use the controls? A Rocket League is a good example, where you can play it like a normal controller, but you can also take them off and turn them sideways. And if you only own 2 controllers, then you can play it with 4. Mario Kart does the same thing. Again, something you have to think about when you're taking your game and trying to put it on the Switch. And then the last part is, I don't know how technical people are, but there's an IL2 CPP, which is interpreted language to C++. And what that does is, when you use like a Unity and you write something in C#, when that C# code runs, it basically just in time compiles it so that the platform can read it. What all the other platforms can use, but the Switch really needs it because of their hardware, is it'll take that C# code, it'll put it in its interpreted language, and then try to write its own C++ code. Unity handles most of this for you, just to make it run fast. But if anybody's worked with IL2 CPP before and run into issues, it's prepared to spend a lot of time figuring out what's wrong with it, because especially in Unity, the tools are not very good yet to be able to handle IL2 CPP. The last one technically is Windows PCs. Windows PCs are kind of all over the place. They're any performance. You have no idea. Some of them are region specific. The gaming rooms in Korea tend to have weaker PCs than your hardcore gamer in Los Angeles. So you have to really think about what you want to say is your min spec, because you still want people to have a good experience on your computer, but they may not have a very good computer. They may be using, the number of times I've had support emails about, I'm using Intel integrated graphics on my laptop, and it's like, well, yeah, you have to think about that stuff. On PCs, you tend to use monitors. Some people, like myself, use more than one monitor. So you have to take into account, if they have more monitors, do you want to use that in your game? Do you want to have a second monitor? I did a game called Planetary Annihilation that you could play in the game in one monitor and actually have a different view in another monitor. So if you have games and you want to exploit that, that works really well for PCs. You got to look at Steam. Steam is the leading digital platform. So think about integrating the things that are good for Steam. And the last thing about Windows PCs, which is really interesting, is they have all kinds of different hardware vendors. The top 3 consoles, of course, are just Nintendo, PlayStation, Sony, and Microsoft. But when it comes to PCs, there's Logitech and SteelSeries, Alienware, Razer, and there's a bunch of other ones that do not just PCs, but they'll also do peripherals, headsets, and keyboards. And the reason why I bring that up is because you can gain some marketing, and I'll go into detail about this later, based on using their hardware for doing different things. So the reason why I go through all this stuff is because when you're writing your game on the technical side, if you want to avoid a lot of like, I need to do this for that platform, you really need to think about abstract code layers. So because Steam and PlayStation and Xbox, not Switch, have achievements. You only want to write them once. So have your game talk to an achievement abstract layer that will then push it out to each platform. Same thing with networking. The Switch comes with its own networking stack. Don't make calls directly as a PC networking stack. Make sure you talk to an abstract layer that will send it off to what Nintendo needs. Same with user handling. If you've worked on an Xbox game, you know user handling is a little bit of a nightmare. Input handling is another way. Input meaning, you got mouse and keyboard, you got the touchpad on the PlayStation, you have, the touch screen on the Switch, and there's other ones. But the idea is to give the idea that these are things that you should be thinking about when you want to port over to another platform. And the last point about that is build or buy tools. There's good tools out there. We have internally developed something called tinyAPI, which is we get a game that is done for PC, it's done on Unity, we plug in our tinyAPI, we wire it up, and a lot of these things are immediately taken care of for the different platforms. There's some other good ones out there. I recently used one called Rewired for input handling, which was really handy because you wire everything up to input handling and then it knows how to talk to all the different controllers. Next section I'm going to talk about is just production stuff. Like, what do you do to get these things to happen? So you're working with PlayStation. There's 4 different developer relations reporting and management structures inside Sony that you have to deal with if you want to go worldwide. And I'm going to be talking worldwide a lot too. SIEA, well, I'm not going to say all the letters. But basically it's America, Europe, Japanese, and Korean. And the reason I bring this up is when you build your game and you put in the artwork that needs for the store and the videos that need for the store and all the reporting structure and you link up your business bank accounts and all that stuff, you're going to need to do this more than once with Sony because they treat these different areas basically as their own company. They do 2 different dev portals too. One is for basic development, the other one's kind of for business stuff and store stuff. When you work with Sony, in order to be able to put a game on their platform, you have to write up a global product proposal. They're the only ones that require this. It's basically a game design document that they force you to write. You'll have to request a title ID from them, so you'll need to find a developer relations person to get a title ID, even to be able to put something on the platform. They have about a 30-day certification window. So if you're like, I need to ship on March 1st, your game better be done on January 30th and submitted because you may miss that if you miss certification. They need certified ratings for all regions. This is something that gets a lot of people. So there's lots of different ratings agencies. And every ratings agency that you want to ship your game to will need a certified rating from that agency. So there's ESRB, there's PEGI, there's lots of them out there. That takes time and money. Make sure you get that done ahead of time. And then also, in order to get on their dev portal, you need a whitelisted IP, which Sony in general is a little hard to work with in that way because you can't reach their dev portal when you're mobile, when you're out and about. So you need a static IP in order to access their dev platform. Xbox, whole different world. They have one point of contact, Microsoft. There's no, I'm going to say this with a caveat. There's only one way you need to interact with them. You talk to Microsoft, there's no Europe, America, they're all the same thing. They have one-ish dev portal. The reason why I say ish is they are currently right now in the middle of switching over from XDP, which was their Xbox One. So you did all your store copy, all your localization, all your pictures, all your videos and stuff through XDP. They are currently pushing hard and trying to switch everybody to using Universal Windows Platform, which is their idea of you build it once and it runs on Windows, and it runs on Xbox, and it runs on all their platforms. They're in the middle of switching over. So if you build a game specifically for Xbox, you'll only deal with XDP. If you build a game for UWP, Universal Windows Platform, you're going to use their other portal. Don't need to use both, unless you decide to do both for some reason. You wouldn't really do that. Talked about Universal's Windows Platform. Just like Sony, you need to talk to your DevRel in order to request a title ID in order to get on. Allow 30 days for certification as well. You also need certified ratings for every region. So again, with Xbox and PlayStation are sort of similar to those. And then the other big thing is Xbox has one of the more unique user handling situations. And This is both production and technical, which is why I brought it up as here as well. Xbox always likes to tie a user account to a logged-in controller. So because it's such a big part of certification, and every time I've failed certification, it's been because of poor user handling. It's something you have to pay attention to. On Monday Night Combat, which was a game I built, we actually failed cert once because a player that was logged in on one controller, if somebody plugged in a second controller, logged in a different account there, logged out of the first one, then the second one, then logged in the first one, and logged the original one in the second one, the game didn't handle it properly. So that's why I'm bringing it up. It's a good thing to understand when it comes to Xbox. For Switch has 3 different developer systems, America, Europe, and Southeast Asia, basically. Their dev portal has 10 separate different sites. They break it up into all these different things. So you log in, and some of them have different logins too. So you'll have to deal with like lots of different logins, and you log into one place, and then they'll need another Nintendo ID to log in another place. These are things you'll need to set up ahead of time. You have to be very careful on how you support the Joy-Con, because the Switch Nintendo is very specific on how you should use them and how you should represent them. And games have gotten through, but if you've had the experience of trying to play 4 players on sideways Joy-Cons that weren't implemented the way Nintendo wants it gets messy. So prepare for that. One of the really nice things about the Switch is once you are a registered developer and you have an organization and you're in there, if you want to create a new title, you can just hit the Create New Title button and you can start creating a new title. Same with all the other platforms. You need 30 days for certification. There is no achievement system yet for the Switch. So it's one thing you don't have to worry about because there are no Switch achievements. You might put them in your game, but there are no Switch achievements. The last thing is ratings. So there is a rating system that's semi-new called the IARC. Don't know what it stands for, but basically, you don't have to go to all the individual rating systems. You can, when you have your Nintendo portal and you get in there, you can just fill out the information and hit a button and it'll come back with a rating. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to worry about the different regions. It's one rating globally. It's really nice. And hopefully at some point, the other platforms will get there. And Steam, like Microsoft, there's a single point of contact. You talk to Valve. There is no Valve America, Valve. It's just you talk to Steam. They have 2 sites. You'll mostly use the one for most of the development and everything. The other site is focused on business, giving you your revenue and unit sales. The other one is all the here's my title, here's the name, here's the art and everything for it, and you'll mostly spend time in there. With Steam, you can purchase a new product ID directly. It used to be that you had to contact them and find a developer relationship person, and then they'd give you an ID. And then they did Steam Greenlight, which was you could put forth a game idea on their site, and then everybody could vote on it. You get a title ID that way. Now you can just buy one for $100, very similar to iOS and Android. You can manage the entire game through the developer portal. Until it gets to the point where you might want to run sales or might want promotions, you can literally put a game on Steam with hardly ever talking to a Valve person. Another nice thing about Steam is there is no certification and there's no there is a direct upload. You don't have to pass through anybody, you don't do anything extra, you just push your game. That, of course, is a double-edged sword. You push a game that's broken, it's not good. And then the ratings are optional. So you can include them or not include them. Next part I'm going to talk about that's part of production is one of the reasons you want to go on all of these is marketing and exposure. Landing on the landing page of any of the stores is everything. You will get most of your sales through these based on whether you're in the Steam carousel, on the Xbox front page, or any of this stuff. In order to do that, they really like when you work with the platform holders for what their platform does. You may not like a Microsoft or a Nintendo or whatever, but think about what they're pushing on their platform and work with them if you want to end up on that front page, because that front page is everything. Make it easy for them to promote your game. Be proactive about it. Tell them about things that you're going to be doing, things that are coming up, things that they might want to know about. Have meetings and lay out your strategy with them so that they know, because you never know. You might be talking to them and be like, well, we have this crazy game that we're thinking about doing. They're like, oh, you're going to ship it then? Well, we have this big thing coming up right then. We'd like it to be part of it. So make it easy to work with them and make it easy for them to promote the game. Leave schedule room for these things, for attending events and doing pre-ship promotions, because they're going to have them all the time. And they're going to, you know, there's Xbox specific ones, there's PlayStation specific ones. Chances are they're going to tell you that they would love to have you there 3 to 4 days before the actual event, which isn't a whole lot of time. So if you're ready for it and you want to have those type of promotions, they will pop up. A key note is a ready game can be marketed to your partners. I know when you're in the middle of building a game, you look at it, you're like, yeah, that art piece isn't done, that sound's not done yet, that kind of thing. But if you have a demo or have parts of your game that are ready to go, that look like they're done, your partners can easily market that. If you're always having something doesn't look good, they won't be able to market it. So always have something ready to show off. And the last one is use their trademarks correctly. They really don't like it when you do riffs on their logos or use it in the ways that they don't want to. Working with Sony, these are things like if you want to help get promotions from these platform holders, use the light bar on their controller, use the touchpad. They're more apt to give you promotions if you're using all of their peripherals, the PS4 Pro enhancements, and even if you go PSVR. They will help promote you more. Xbox, make it Xbox One Enhanced, which is, use the 4K, use the HDR. Xbox Microsoft owns Mixer. For anybody who doesn't know, Mixer is Microsoft's own Twitch. They have really, really nice the viewer interactivity in it. So the viewers can actually press buttons and make stuff happen in the game for the streamer they're watching. If you implement their stuff, they will be much more likely to feature your game. So you want to think about those things when working in Microsoft. On Nintendo, make sure the same experience is on the handheld as in the TV configuration. That is one of the biggest things I've heard. Like, it's not good when something's running at a beautiful 30 frames and looks beautiful up on the TV and they pick up the handheld and it drops to 10 frames. Don't want that. They want to be able to promote games that show off their hardware. Make use of the Joy-Con in all their configurations. And multiplayer on single screen and handheld is also a big thing, because they want the Switch to be a group event, like everybody's playing it together. That's why they give all these abilities to play it up on the big screen and take it with you. So use these things and work with Nintendo. You make them happy, they make you happy. With Valve, they have a lot of stuff. Include the Steamworks integration. Use the Steam Workshop. Incorporate, along with the Steam Workshop, incorporate user-generated content. Figure out how people are going to mod your game, how they're going to add new stuff to it, and then use the Steam Workshop and make sure it goes in your game. That will entice them to talk to you more. Don't update with broken builds. The Steam allows you to update your game at any time, but if you constantly update one that they're receiving support calls and stuff about, they're not going to be more apt to promote you more. Be fair across other PC digital stores. Don't undercut Steam, don't undercut Valve when going to other stores. Just they're the big ones. Be nice to them, and then use the Steam Marketplace as well. Storefronts, common features. If you haven't worked with a storefront before, you're going to need all kinds of images for your game. Make sure you have time to do this. You're going to need trailers. You're going to need videos. You're going to need short descriptions, long descriptions, names, tags, genres, all localized to every language you need. So make sure you need that. Some of them will also need platform branded ones. There are images for Xbox and PlayStation where you need your box art with the Xbox logo across the top. Trailer, well, I just already went through these. Know what price you want to. You have to put in whatever your price is. It's not going to be one. It's normally not going to be one number because either they'll give you the opportunity to put different prices globally, or they'll give you one and then they'll translate it globally. So keep in mind that if you sell something for $15 in the U.S., it might not be $15 everywhere. Have all your rating info handy. You'll be putting that in there. And then distributed countries. So keep in mind about all the different countries that you're going to be shipping your game to. Some unique features. Sony and Nintendo have separate sites to add store data. Xbox requires, you can't just directly upload it to their site. You actually have to put it in a zip file, fill out an Excel sheet, send that in, and then somebody manually puts it up for you. So there's a time loop there that you have to take into account. Steam doesn't require any certification. The console platforms do require certification, not just for when you're first shipped, but every update. The rating things I discussed. Steam does offer crowdsourced translations. I've had mixed results with it, and sometimes it takes a little bit for turnaround, but it is an option. Sorry if I'm going a little fast too. I know I'm running out of time. Last big section I'm going to talk about is design, because actually most of my career has been a game designer, and there are some design considerations you have to think about when moving between the different platforms. So you make sure you design to the strengths of the platform. You know, virtual thumb pads on a touchscreen don't really work all that great. Radial menus work great on consoles, not always on PC, not always. Using non-traditional button layouts is something you have to consider. And keyboard remapping for PCs. If you ship a shooter in particular, I use a very weird setup where my mouse is forward and backwards as the two buttons. So do me a favor and add keyboard remapping to your game. Consider a different balance per platform. I'll talk about that in a minute. And different shooter techniques. So I did a game called Monday Night Combat, and this is what I'm going to use as an example. So we put it on Steam, we put it on Xbox 360. Different changes. It's a different game on the PC. So on Steam, because it was a shooter, we didn't have to worry about, we didn't do any kind of aim helping whatsoever. But when you're using a console, it gets really hard to actually line up a shot. And we spent a lot of time looking at Call of Duty and other big AAA shooter games, trying to figure out what is it that they do. So for the 360 version, we added in view friction, which is like if you move your controller across somebody, we detect if there's somebody's in front of you and actually slow down your aim. View adhesion, if you're trying to aim at somebody and somebody's moving, we actually pull your camera with you. And then aim attraction, if you shoot near somebody, we nudge your shot a little bit. Something players don't notice, but it makes the feel on a controller so much better. So it's something you have to consider in design. Because of these reasons, our sniper rifle had only 4 shots on PC and 10 on the Xbox, because it was so much harder to land a headshot using a console, using a controller than it was with a PC. So we had to bring it down, or else snipers were just ruining the game for anything. Then we found, like, we had a tank charge. One of our guys named the tank could charge forward, damaging everything that he hit. On a console, he'd hit 1 and maybe 2. But on PC, he could literally zigzag and hit 4 or 5 guys. So we had to pull down that. Same with, we had this little turret that the support could throw out. We had to make it so it didn't die so fast, because PC players could snap, aim, and shoot it before it ever came up. And it was making it really hard for that class to play. And lastly, 2 of our classes had jump jets that they could fly in the air. On a controller, since you're aiming with one, you have to pull your button off to hold down A to keep jumping. So you have to bounce back and forth between the thumbstick and the A. And that was really hard to do until you get to PC, where you can just hold down spacebar and move any way you want, and they were being way deadlier. So we had to pull down the jump jet recharge on those. So take into consideration the differences between the platform when you design for those. Conclusion: know the technical strengths of each platform. Play to them if you can. Don't underestimate the effort, nuance, and time it takes to port your game. These things take time, especially when you're working with external people like ratings agencies. Don't expect to be able to put in your ratings agency the day before you want to submit the cert and have it back in time. It's not going to happen. Cultivate good relationships with platform holders. Having a good relationship with Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, even if you don't like them as a company, still have a good relationship with them, because being on their platform and being on the front page is everything if you want to sell your game. Work with the platforms to integrate their needs into your game. You know, the needs will come up and down. There was a time where Microsoft will give you all kinds of promotion for Kinect. That won't happen anymore, because Kinect's not really a thing anymore. But look at what they have, build that kind of stuff into your game. Understand the platforms are global, and deal with it. You know, that comes down to ratings. That comes down to understanding price differences. Cultural differences is a big one. You know, don't put a game in as culture that you know won't like the type of game you have. I'm not going to go into specifics there. To make design changes that best suit each platform. Very similar to what I talked about with Monday Night Combat. And then publishers can be a huge help with all this stuff. So if you're working by yourself or as an indie and are kind of feeling a little daunted by all this amount of work that needs to be done, talk to a publisher. It's one of the things we do at tinyBuild is really help manage ratings and localization and storefronts and relationships and all that stuff. Publishers can be a big, big help there. So there's my contact information, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, John. Можно подходить к микрофону, если есть вопросы, или я подбегу. My first question was about you wrote that store page, landing page is everything. So you can't do any changes in design of store pages on Steam or Xbox, etc. So do you do any A/B testing of marketing materials of the game? Like trying to make right direction we should choose for marketing?
I have in the past. So far as I did a mobile game where we actually put up a fake link for the icon and actually found that one of the icons hit 20%.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so
what
we
I
have
mean.
done that in the past. I don't think we've done it yet for things like Steam, but it is definitely something that when we put out our key art for all that stuff, and we will sometimes use them in different marketing, we can see which ones are more effective.
Okay. You work with different Okay. Еще вопросы?
I've been here 5 months. I'm really going to work on my Russian and Ukrainian soon.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Alex, and I have such question. Developing of AA games could take 3-4 years. And how could you predict new features in consoles, which could appear in 4 years, for example?
You can't really predict it, but if you do cultivate a good relationship with the platform holders, they will tell you ahead of time what it is. If they know that you are a developer that will treat them right, will put out a solid game that's not buggy and that you are reliable, that you will hit your dates, they will want to talk to you more. So that's the nice thing. If you're a good developer, they will want to talk to you more. And then they will come to you and say, hey, we have this cool new thing we're working on, we'd like to show you. And then they will show you ahead of time. And if you can really pull it off, if it's something big, like if you were a Switch and you were a launch title, it could be a huge boost to you as a launch title for some new big product. But that all speaks to cultivating that good relationship with the platform holder.
Thank you.
My another question is about Tiny API. Is it correct?
Yes.
I talked to Alex about 3 or 4 months ago about when this feature was introduced by your company. Did you have any success of outsourcing it to another developers, or you use it as advantage of your publishing strength?
We haven't had any success outsourcing it, but that has more to do with the fact that we don't feel it's complete yet. There's, especially with the rise of the Switch, we're adding more stuff for other platforms. So we don't feel like it's a complete enough software yet. But we are actively using it and actively working on it to handle all these different things you have to worry about with all the different platforms.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I have a question. When you develop the cross-platform game, is it one team that makes this game for all the platforms, or different teams which then connect everything together?
Yes. Both. It kind of depends on the developer. You could do it yourself. We at tinyBuild we have already very many times taken a game that we've published on PC, and we actually have a porting team in the Netherlands that handles They finish the game, we put it on the PC, they hand them the code, and then they get it to work on the Switch and the Xbox and the PlayStation. So it kind of depends. It's kind of up to the developer whether they want to or not, whether they feel like they have the bandwidth. Often, especially for small indies, trying to hit every platform is kind of a daunting, a big task for like 4 people. But if you come to a publisher like us, we can then have our own team that has done this many times and can probably do it much faster. And then, of course, we work with the developers as well for any design changes that need to happen, or balance changes, or technical changes, or that sort of thing. So, yeah, just there's no one answer, basically.
More questions?
Hi. I have a question. If there is any point in developing the game for the exclusively for exact platform, for example, for PS4 or Xbox, if you're not developing The Last of Us, for example, or the smaller project, but exclusively for one platform and focusing on benefits of the exact platform, is there any point? And not releasing on another platforms, on Steam or so on.
It's kind of up to you. And I say that because, well, if you're, like, there was a Horizon Zero Dawn earlier. They're owned by Sony, so of course they're going to do PlayStation only. But if there is a platform that really likes you, and you can sometimes you can strike deals with them that is like, if you stay exclusive, or there's usually an exclusivity period. My last game that I shipped was a Google Daydream game. And we had a year exclusivity. We weren't going to put it on Oculus or anything for a year. And that guaranteed us front-end promotion. So there are reasons, but it's kind of up to you whether you want to do it or not. I mean, it would be, in my point of view, it would be a shame to be like, I'm going to do this on Switch only, and it goes and it blows up, and I sold 3 million copies, and I want to sell 3 million copies on other platforms, but I send a deal saying I'm never going to take it to another platform. So it's very, when it comes to business decisions like that, there's a lot of gray area. You can do a lot of different things, and you just have to figure out what's best for yourself.
And from which platform do you advise to start? Which is easier? I mean, the high performance platform. So it's Xbox or the PlayStation 4?
PC.
Okay, thank you.
Just because they're the easiest. Getting games up on PC and selling as PC is by far the easiest out of all of them.
Opa. Let's say that we've made a game for PC. Usually PC has more potential technically. And unfortunately we've sold, I don't know, 3 million copies of the game. And we want to port this game on other platforms. Were there problems when usually PC is more powerful than other platforms? And were there situations when you have to cut the potential of the game or the game mechanics for other platforms because they are less powerful or have other hardware?
First of all, if you sell 3 million units, I want to talk to you. Just throw that out there. And if you sell 3 million units, I hope you have a house somewhere and take a long vacation. That aside, normally when you build a PC game, especially nowadays, I mean, I'm a really old person, so I remember when hardware was really slow. Nowadays, the chances of you using all the power of the high-end PC is really small. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying you don't, because it's possible. But trying to really push the hardware of the high-end PCs nowadays, you have to have something super polished and super amazing. So there's usually some headroom there is the reason why I say that. So, if you're not hitting the high-end PC, chances are it'll probably run on the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X pretty well. That said, I have never worked on a game that couldn't be more performant. Like, there's always somewhere you can make things better, somewhere. A lot of times it's the graphics throughput, and one of the things that you can down-res it, You can often, physics is another thing that tends to kill performance. Often you can go through and look at your physics objects and be like, wow, that thing's never moving. Why is it a physics object? Why is it colliding with this? In Unity, look at your physics layers and be like, oh, those things are constantly colliding, running an update function on these things. It doesn't need to do that. You find a lot of things. So it's somewhat rare to be like, yeah, we can't get any more performance out of it, so we can't be on the Xbox. In fact, I've never heard that happening. At the very least, if it does happen, you can cut some things. Figure out what's causing the performance issues. Maybe it's too many things in the skybox or too many trees. Pull some trees out. Pull the LOD levels in, so things LOD out or level of detail out faster. There's almost always a way to do it. I'd say my last game was Daydream, trying to get 60 frames per second, because you have to for VR, on a Pixel 1 phone using Unity was really, really tough. But one of the things we did was we down-resed it slightly, and that was able to bring our frame rate up. So instead of running at, I don't remember exactly, instead of running at 720, I think we ran at like 680 or something like that. So it wasn't noticeable to the player, but it kept frame rate up enough, which is absolutely needed in VR. So, hope that answers your question.
Hi, you've mentioned community translations on Steam, but do they remain exclusively for Steam, or you can just say, hey, we have a translation, let's approach other platforms, and if it's possible to implement them?
Yeah, it's a crowdsourced service they have. So once you have the translations, you can use them. Now, it's crowdsourced, so they have tools available to kind of make sure your translations are good, but you still don't guarantee yourself having good translations. So it's always good to at least have somebody look it over. Once they're translated, I mean, there's no exclusivity of having to keep it on Steam. And it's just text. They have no way of validating that you got that from Steam. One note about translation, I recommend against using Google Translate. It's been known to offend a few people.
Thank you.
Еще вопросы? О.
Hello. Thank you very much for sharing experience. And my question is, do you think there is any reason to target any different digital market than Steam?
Yes, actually there is. Every other digital market has its benefits. And the only reason why I targeted Steam because the best sales are on there. But you can also, Humble, working with Humble Bundle, they're probably number 2 when it comes to non-big company owned digital platforms. You can make good money off of Humble. You can also make money off of itch.io and GOG and all those as well. And each of those has a different fan base. So if you're building a super artsy indie game, itch.io might be a great platform for you, because those type of gamers looking for that type of game will go to that platform. So there are good other reasons for it. If you're working with EA, you might want to be on Origin. If you're working with Activision, you might want to be on, if you can get on the Blizzard app, awesome. Same thing with Uplay, same with, there's all these other platforms. The reason I chose Steam was just because it's kind of the platform agnostic. Yeah, it's owned by Valve, but almost anybody can get on it, and it's the biggest one. But yeah, there are other reasons to go to other platforms. And the same thing with all the other platforms, with maintaining good relationships with them. You will get good placement on the stores for Humble and Green Man Gaming and Bundle Stars and all these other platforms if you talk to them and work with them.
Еще вопросы? Все.
Hello, what programming language would you recommend to use to be cross-platform?
I don't recommend any specific language, but I do, especially if you're a new indie, highly recommend using one of the engines. Unity or Unreal are the 2 big ones. Unreal is you're either using their blueprint system or you're writing in C++. Unity's C#. Just use C#. It's a great language. Does everything you need. If you're to use Unity, use C#. Just because there are so many things you have to worry about making a game from scratch that Unity and Unreal take care of. You don't want to be writing a shader system and a loading system and a hardware controller system and all that stuff. You don't want to do that. So just use Unity or Unreal or any of the other engines and use whatever language they use best.
Все, no more questions. Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you, everybody.